Could The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword Remake be coming to the Nintendo Switch in 2021, or could it be happening in general? There's a few things that could lead to those questions being answered. Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword is one of the most controversial games, if not the most controversial, in the entire series. Skyward Sword added one of the better features from the capabilities of the Wii Motion Remote by adding sword control motions to the game. Back in the middle of 2020, the Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword Nintendo Switch version was listed and set to release on the Amazon website in the UK, which would be absolutely perfect timing for an HD version release for its 10-year mark anniversary. Wind Waker released for the GameCube in 2003 and got a Wii U remaster in 2013, and the same thing also happened for Twilight Princess, which released in 2006 and got a remaster in 2016. It seems kind of strange that they released Twilight Princess in 2016 for the Wii U and they didn't wait a full year for it to release on Switch, but oh well. With all of that in mind, Skyward Sword HD seems more realistic to me. Now, we shouldn't take the Amazon listing as proof that we're getting Skyward Sword HD or it's coming to the Nintendo Switch in general, because website stuff like that happens all the time and we shouldn't really play into it very much. But what I will say is, if history does repeat itself, then we are on a very good trajectory. With Mario getting the 3D All-Stars treatment for all of their big time 3D platform games, it's definitely possible that they could be planning the same thing for the Legend of Zelda series, which, if you're not aware, happens this February. A series of trademarks in the year of 2020 suggests that Nintendo has had this plan for the Zelda series for quite some time, and it's definitely deserving because Zelda has been one of Nintendo's most successful franchises for quite some time. Skyward Sword could easily make its way into that equation for people to be able to enjoy, along with games like Majora's Mask, Twilight Princess, or maybe even Wind Waker. Now, with that being said, Skyward Sword was also planned for the 25th anniversary of the series. The irony is really kicking in. Next month is Zelda's 35th anniversary, and this remaster could be a true treat for all the players that just recently got into the series due to the high success of Breath of the Wild. I think one of the biggest kickers for this, and might be a far-fetched idea that would probably never happen, is to bundle Skyward Sword HD with Breath of the Wild 2 this year if it does release. Many fans were not fond of Skyward Sword, and it shows from its sales numbers being only 3.7 million sales on the Wii. I think that possibly bundling it with a game that people are actually anticipating it would help people truly get the game, and maybe even enjoy it. Now, obviously, it wouldn't really make sense for them to do it with Breath of the Wild 2, but I could easily see it for their 35th anniversary Triforce collection that I really hope happens, but we'll have to wait to see what Nintendo decides to do. One of the biggest problems with bringing Skyward Sword to the Nintendo Switch is the motion controls. Although the Nintendo Switch is built for motion and has many great motion control features, I think we can all agree that the Wii Remote, especially with the Wii Motion Plus attachment added to the controller, had a little bit more flexibility to the system and game. But I will say that technology has advanced, so we should be able to get most of the same experiences with the Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons. But the biggest question for Zelda fans that wanted to enjoy the game but couldn't due to the horrendous motion controls is, what if they took out the motion controls entirely and just had it play like a normal Zelda game? The game, for its story, deserves a lot of high praise, as overall the game and the plot altogether were astonishing to play. If I could play Skyward Sword in handheld mode on the Nintendo Switch while just chilling at my house and not have to worry about standing up and slicing my Joy-Con through the air, let's just say I would enjoy the game even more, and I think a lot of people would as well. But unfortunately, that reality might not actually happen. In an interview with Aonuma, one of Zelda's biggest designers did mention something about changing past games and adding new elements into games, and mentioned Link's Awakening. Aonuma said, and I quote, "When we were thinking about this game, we always wanted to incorporate something where the player could do some kind of arranging of their own, and what we came up with was the dungeon arranging." Aonuma says Link's Awakening was a perfect fit for that, especially with the dungeons, so we wanted to incorporate that with this new reimagined game. Aonuma was then asked if any other Zelda remakes were planned, and he said that there is a need for new mechanics in remakes to keep them fresh. Currently, I don't have plans, but there is a title that we can incorporate new elements and new features that is perhaps a perfect fit for a remake, then maybe we'll consider it. Aonuma was then asked the question that many Skyward Sword and Zelda fans alike have been waiting for, the new element of removing motion controls for a potential remake of Skyward Sword. "So you're saying control it with all buttons?" he says with a squint, and closed with, "That's a little hard. I think it might be close to impossible." Now, although he stated in the past that it really isn't a possibility, I still have hope that it can happen. Even if the game does get a remaster treatment, I think that Skyward Sword could still potentially be a great game, especially on the Nintendo Switch. One thought this it did cross my mind, considering that the Switch motion controls are simply just weaker than the Wii Remote and Wii Motion Plus attachment, is maybe the Nintendo Switch Pro comes out with updated graphics, updated motion controls, and most likely updated Joy-Cons. I can only imagine that Nintendo's next console, the Switch Pro or whatever they want to call it, is going to have much better motion controls. Let's be honest, technology has improved, so I'm sure Nintendo is going to capitalize on that. I think the part that I'm most excited about is the Nintendo Switch already is a huge leap from the Wii, and if we get a Switch Pro, I can only imagine the graphics that we'll get for a Skyward Sword HD will be insane. I really love the theme of Skyward Sword, and I cannot wait to re-experience it. But nonetheless, if Skyward Sword returned even without motion controls, I would still play the absolute crap out of it. The game deserves some high praise, and it definitely deserves a remake no matter what. We are so close to the Nintendo Switch having every single game we could ever hope for, especially as it relates to Legend of Zelda. I want all of the mainline games from the consoles as well as the handhelds available on the Switch, and I really hope those get remakes as well. Nintendo, you've got your work cut out for you, but I'm confident that Nintendo can make it happen. This has been Wes, and I will talk to you on the next video.